Hi, this is Mehdi.
Hey, this is Fran.
This is Total Tactics Football. Today, we're going to be talking about the big upcoming game between Everton and Liverpool. Fran, how excited are you about this game?
I'm tremendously excited because obviously Everton have had an unwanted record versus Liverpool in recent years, but now this Everton side looks absolutely rejuvenated. And at the same time, since the lockdown, we've seen Liverpool struggle, and it culminated, of course, in that 7-2 loss versus Aston Villa, which was
Yeah.
all the rage before the Nations League matches started.
No, absolutely. And Everton's been in like sublime form, 4 out of 4. They're on the top of the table, something that Ancelotti is going to get a lot of confidence out. And I feel these players are going to be up for this challenge. It's been a long time. They want the bragging rights, and this gives them the perfect chance to take that, the step forward. I feel like one of the biggest threats in this game for Liverpool is going to be Dini and Richarlison on that left-hand side. We've seen Digne provide that width, that sort of penetrating runs that he makes in behind the fullbacks, and uses his sublime creative abilities to cut back or either put in an excellent cross. We saw him do that against France in the Nations League, and I feel that is something that can be exploited. We know Trent is a very talented player who has incredible passing range, but he sometimes misses out on that defensive side. We saw him and Gomez struggle, well, not a little bit, but we saw against Aston Villa how that led. And I feel if these two are up for the game, Dini might be a doubt for the match, but if he makes it for the cut, that left hand side is going to be a little bit of a problem.
I think, yeah, I agree absolutely. Naturally, Everton like to press with Calvert-Lewin and Richarlison crowding that sort of left side, and that allows Digne to have the space to run in behind. And we saw that was very effective the same way that Watkins created a solo goal starting from the left-hand side where he made a long run and was able to beat out Gomez one-on-one. And that's, for me, one of the kind of key threats that Everton already have. They play a system where they like to play through the wings, and they have the kind of offensive pieces where their fullbacks and even James have this amazing crossing ability, as you mentioned. And ultimately, the way Trent plays, it's not necessarily that he's a poor defender, but just the fact that Liverpool like to have him in a very high offensive position, somewhat as a right wing back. But him having the space offensively means that, Gomez will have a harder time. And unfortunately, Van Dijk isn't able to cover so effectively. And then you have Allison missing as well. That's going to hurt Liverpool a lot because they have less options in terms of who the ball can be deferred to when they get pressed man on man. And if Everton have, for example, let's say Calvert-Lewin marking Van Dijk, you have Richarlison marking Gomez, and you have Digne kind of pegging Trent back, then when they move on to press Adrian, I think you would be worried as a Liverpool fan because they've really struggled at recent times to play out of the back. And Van Dijk seems to be the only kind of safe option in terms of creating a diagonal.
No, absolutely. And talking about Richarlison there, like this is a player who's growing up in Brazil, and that doesn't necessarily mean he came from an environment where you're promoted. You are supposed to take initiative as a player. He's someone a sort of a player who's in the Mane fold that it's hard to mark, unpredictable. They use their physicality and their superb understanding of the game to kind of cause havoc. And when you have that kind of player against pressing as you, if let's say suppose Gomez does play, there's going to be a bit of, as we mentioned, there's going to be a bit of unease in that defense. We know Richarlison is going to be targeting that specific spot. He doesn't like to touch the hug the touchline too often. He drops in, sort of plays as a second striker at times. He's got an eye for goal. He's good with both feet, and that is where this issue is going to be. I feel like the game is going to be played a lot. We've seen James, a player with so much technical ability. We've seen him do these reverse passes, defense splitting passes across the field to either Digne. He has a really good rapport with Richarlison. Once you find Richarlison in those pockets, that is now a problem for either if Fabinho plays there, they're going to have a problem. We're just going to pull the defenders out. Richarlison is very good at drawing the defenders towards him. He can take them on with his skills, and that leaves a gap. And that gap is where something I feel like Klopp is going to be looking at. And James, he is going to be running the show. A player is going to move in from the right hand side into that number 10 role, but with sort of the freedom to be able to move as without any responsibility in a sense. And that is a problem of its own.
I agree with that. And I think what James provides, when he moves from that right wing position into the center of the field, is the ability to unlock these pockets of space. But the way Liverpool orchestrate, they have a 4-2-3-1 static structure where I think either one of Fabinho or maybe even if Thiago plays, will be trying to mark that natural position as they will be the metronome of Liverpool. And it'll be interesting to see how these two teams clash in the midfield, because we see Everton usually operate with a 4-3-3 holding formation. In a sense, when James drops in, then it becomes a sort of diamond. When they defend, it becomes more of a 4-4-2. But it'll be interesting to see how Liverpool match up against that. I think one of the key threats that Liverpool have, of course, is when James is, for example, at a more advanced position, or at least in the center of the field, there is this little bit of space for Robertson to operate on the left. And perhaps what needs to happen for Everton is for Doucoure to play a little bit deeper this game and to understand that he has to play a very defensive role to cover James and Coleman if they push up. And Andre Gomez, on the other hand, might wish to also play the more offensive role. He likes to play sometimes almost alternating with Allan and dropping back, but I think he should use his license. He has actually fantastic technical skills and abilities too, so he should really be looking to support the left hand side where they can overwhelm Liverpool and overcrowd them.
No, absolutely. And I feel like as you mentioned, Allan, he's going to be very, very crucial in that defense. We know these players have the defensive ability and understanding to keep their positions, but knowing how the pedigree of these Liverpool players, Allan will need to be supporting both Doucoure and Gomez, whoever is being pressed by the Liverpool flanks. And then we know Liverpool likes to use their width, the wings, to be able to create chances to either run down those channels. And Allan is going to be instrumental in keeping that sort of order between that midfield, dictating them when to press, dictating them when to hold their positions, keep those spots tight. So make it difficult for Liverpool and force them to go back. And when they go back, as we mentioned with the front three of them press, it pushes the ball back to Adrian, a player we know who's maybe not as comfortable on the ball. And that is something where Ancelotti is going to keep an eye on this.
No, I agree with that. And I think the issue is that even though Allan is very defensively astute and understands, where to defend, and you can see that kind of matched by his heat maps too. He plays in very odd positions at times, but that's because he constantly responds to the kind of new emerging threat in the opposition team. The problem is, of course, you have someone like Firmino who is so aware positionally of what he does in the field. He drops into that kind of Liverpool diamond, which creates a lot of issues because although Salah and Mane don't necessarily press one-on-one that hard, they do have that license to kind of catch people off guard once the rest of their team have already pressed all the sort of open channels. So although maybe let's say Keane or Mina, I'm not sure if he's going to play, perhaps Godfrey will feature actually. But effectively, even though the center backs of Everton might have time to pass, they might not have the options to pass too. And it's in that kind of passage of play where you distribute from the back that Liverpool pounce. And Firmino dropping deep into the channels will mean that Everton have to respond to the threat adequately. And ultimately, the issue with Everton pushing their fullback so high means that there probably are more opportunities for both Salah, who is very, very offensive and technical and has that pace. You saw how he beat Tierney, for example, in the Arsenal match, despite Tierney being such a good defensive player. And those one-on-ones aren't what Everton, want to face when they meet Salah and Mane.
No, you're absolutely right. And I feel like for me, another little of a place of worry for Everton is going to be Pickford. I find him sometimes a bit erratic. He is not the most confident and comfortable player. I think I've mentioned this a few times, and we've seen how Mane does that. With his press and the way he targets and hounds down those players, aka Kepa, who might not have the most confidence. And I feel if Pickford is not on his game, and if he loses concentration a little bit, Mane could be there to pounce on those situations, and that's something Klopp knows and will definitely be telling Mane to do a bit more.
Absolutely. So what are your predictions for the game?
So I'm very, I like how this Everton side is set up, and they've done really good. But I do feel after that 7-2 thrashing from Aston Villa, there is no chance that Klopp's men will not come out and give their best. And if the fact that Digne and maybe Jerry Mina, or possibly will not play, that's going to cause a lot of problems for Everton. And I think Liverpool just have enough pedigree to win this Merseyside Derby. What about you?
I think I'm going to go with form here, and I think we've watched Everton play fantastic football, and I don't see any reason why James can't perform exactly as he has so far. I think if Digne is able to play and Everton get to play with their starting 11 that they featured in the first three games, then they should actually be able to win one of their first few Merseyside derbies in this decade.
Well, Everton fans will be loving this, so let's hope and let's see what happens at this weekend.